Our next speaker is Allison Lewis. Oh no.
I just pushed it for you.
Oh.
I'm practicing with this.
She's with Jacobs Environmental. I forget the name of her. The purpose is to share how constructed and natural wetlands can be leveraged as powerful multifunctional components of one water and alternative water supply strategies to enhance water supply reliability, improve water quality, and support regional recharge. And this connection to the CCMP is for hydrological restoration. Action 2, increase freshwater, surface water, and groundwater availability to support healthy ecosystems. So you can take it away. Thank you. There you go. Yep.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you all here. I'm from right up the road in Venice, grew up here. Just appreciate all the hard work you guys are doing for our waterways. Our waterways are what inspired me to be an environmental engineer, so it's awesome today. All right, so what is One Water? I know we touched on it earlier, so maybe this is a little bit of a review for you. You're probably familiar with it in all the areas that you're working in. But it's really looking at managing One Water from a holistic perspective, and looking at how we can think about water in an integrated way, not just in silos of reclaimed water, storm water, drinking water, and just kind of thinking about how can we manage it, how can we maybe with one project look at multiple sources of water to benefit society and also the environment. Oops, sorry, I forgot. Over here. There we go. Oops. So why wetlands for One Water? Well, they are a critical component of our natural hydrologic cycle. And so if you think about it, you have rainfall turns into storm water, wetlands collect the storm water, they can store it, they can help with flood protection. You have your floodplain wetlands, and then sometimes they'll seep it into the aquifers below, provide recharge benefits, or maybe to a nearby waterway. And so they kind of connect that water loop and all the different types of water in nature. In addition, they also are very good at reducing pollutants and nutrients. I'm sure some of you are familiar. There's several biogeochemical processes that happen in wetlands. They are nature's kidneys. And so because of these multiple processes, they're very good at improving water quality. You can think of the plants as like your hardware in a computer, and the microbes as like the software that's really driving the processes and reducing the nutrients. We do have some physical processes like sedimentation and absorption, but really it's the biogeochemistry with the aerobic zones and the anaerobic zones that's driving a lot of these water quality benefits. The plants are the structure for the biofilms and also the carbon source for them feeding us. All right, so why also consider wetlands? Well, they offer sustainable water management and water quality improvement. If you think about conventional systems, there's a lot of energy, resources that kind of goes into water treatment. And often there's a residual that you have to manage in some form. So this can kind of increase your costs. But when you think about natural systems, we're really relying on these natural processes. We're powered by the sun, we're utilizing gravity, the land around us, and the plants and the biology. So it can often save some of the water treatment costs. So since we're in Florida, I just thought it'd be important to note that it's really an established treatment technology, and it was established here. Dr. Odom at the Center for Wetlands at the U.S. first investigated applying reclaimed water to cypress domes to see the effect of both. And what he found is there were mutual benefits. So these hydrologically altered cypress domes needed the water to thrive, and the water provided enhanced productivity and biodiversity. And then at the same time, this water received some natural treatment from the wetlands there. And so moving on into the 80s, this research was starting to get applied. There was more protection of wetlands. The Boot wetlands was one of the first natural systems I'll talk about later that received reclaimed water. And then we had an application rule, chapter 62, 611, that allowed the permitting reclaimed water applied to natural wetlands. And then we started to see construction of treatment wetlands. So these are man-made wetlands. They're not located on natural wetlands. They're in the upland areas and they're contained with earthen berms. And so Lakeland and Orlando Easterly wetlands constructed around 1987. If you haven't checked out the Orlando Easterly wetlands, I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful spot. They have a wetland festival, lots of trails. It's just a really neat treatment wetland park to see in one of the older ones. And then moving on to the 90s, you know, with the focus on Everglades, EPA came out with a treatment wetland database. A lot of research was conducted at the different water management districts. And then we started to see the implementation of these parks from more utilities. Wakotahachie Wetland Park down in Palm Beach County was one of the first in the 90s to take reclaimed water from their wastewater facility, treat it through a wetland, and also have some infiltration benefits. And then moving on to 2000, so we saw an uptick in constructed treatment wetlands, as well as the literature and the study of them. And so then moving on kind of to today, we're seeing a lot more recharge wetlands or wetlands designed to help augment both water supply of both groundwater and surface water. Sorry. And this map here kind of shows you just how popular these systems are and kind of where they are throughout the state. And most of these are focused on reclaimed water. Some of them also accept stormwater. I don't have a map with the stormwater wetlands. We're missing Freedom Park here down in Collier County, which is a very popular park to treat stormwater, protect the Gordon River and Naples Bay. But this just kind of gives you a picture of where a lot of them are. You'll notice there's quite a few in the unconfined areas. There's a lot of recharge wetlands in the north. And looking at this map, I see that there's a great opportunity in Southwest Florida to consider some of these treatment wetland technologies. All right, so I'm going to kind of talk about both how we can augment groundwater supply and surface water supply and the different types of wetlands that can get us there. So starting off, I'm going to talk a little bit about infiltreatment wetlands. Sorry, I'm having trouble with the clicker today. So infiltreatment wetlands, they're also known as groundwater recharge wetlands. And so they are constructed wetlands. We have an earthen berm around them. We design different kind of marsh habitats within them. Usually, you know, about an average of a foot depth. We have a deep zone that kind of spreads out all over the water, and it kind of sheet flows across the wetland. We use a first order model to size these depending on the flow and the loads that they're seeing. And then most of the water exits the wetland either through evapotranspiration or infiltration. There's no surface water outlet. So these are great in locations that have more permeable soils and then can later filter their way to the groundwater supply. So one of the most prominent constructed wetlands is in County for treatment or for infill treatment. And the northern Tampa Bay water use caution area had significant drawdown in both their superficial and upper Florida aquifers due to groundwater withdrawals. And in the meantime, Pasco County had an excess of reclaimed water, particularly in the summer. People don't need to irrigate as much. And so this project was kind of born out of both of these needs to manage the reclaimed water, but also to augment the groundwater supply. And so the 4G Ranch wetlands are about 175 acres of constructed wetlands. You'll see that we design them to try to blend in with the landscape so they have organic shapes. And each of them are fed by reclaimed water. This site is permitted for 5 million gallons per day. And that's based on the infiltration rate at this site, which is around 1 inch per day. And it's just been a great kind of success story of replenishing the aquifer, both in the superficial and in the upper Floridan. You'll see on the figure to the left that the green lines are the 15 wetland cells that we designed, and the project effects extend past those boundaries. We actually see a rise in the aquifer system at about 3,000 acres. This was based on our modeling efforts with our integrated surface water groundwater model. And then to the figure on the left, this just shows the water quality benefits. You see a reduction of nitrate down to background levels. And this is particularly the case in recharge wetlands because they have anaerobic carbon-rich soils, so that really drives high denitrification rates. And that's one benefit to these types of systems as well, that added boost in denitrification and treatment of that subsurface layer beneath the wetland. Right, and then a little bit further north, we have the city of Ocala's Wetland Recharge Park. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Silver Springs. It was one of the first tourist attractions before Mickey Mouse came to town. And it's just beautiful. I've spent a lot of time on these springs and just the clarity and to see the eelgrass, but over time you notice more algae, declining flows. And so the city of Ocala decided to take both stormwater from a nearby property that was flooding a lot and their reclaimed water and apply it to a groundwater recharge well about 30 acres. And so they were previously sending this water to rain fields where there was really no benefit. You're not getting water quality treatment. A lot of it is lost to evaporation. And so repurposing this reclaimed water, putting it through a wetland, getting the treatment, because Silver Springs also has PMAX and TMDL for nitrate. So reducing nitrogen to nitrate down to background levels, and then also recharging upper And this site is permitted up to 5 million gallons per day, and it's about 30 acres of wetlands. In addition, you can see some trails. This site has one of the best educational displays I've seen in a wetland park. It's not too far off I-75, so if you're ever on a road trip, it's a great rest stop, they have bathrooms, and just a neat walking trail. And I think their bird counts up to 175 different species, and they use this for a lot of their community events. All right, so what about in areas where maybe you have more confinement and you still need that recharge benefit to your groundwater supplies? One concept is looking at constructed wetlands where there is a surface flow outlet. This is kind of the first type of constructed wetland developed where you had an inlet and an outlet. And so from that deep zone outlet, pull the water and send it to an aquifer recharge well to either maybe increase your recharge rate or to get to areas that might have been. And I guess it's important to note too, you could look at this, it doesn't have to necessarily be a surface flow constructed well, and it could be a natural wetland, as in the case of Flatford Swamp in Yankee County. I'm sure some of you are familiar with this every day. And so here we had a swamp that actually had too much water, and we were seeing a lot of tree die off. This swamp is right outside the most impacted area of the southern water use potential area. So there was a need for recharge and augmenting groundwater supplies. So the district came up with the idea of installing a recharge well to take the excess flows from Flatford Swamp and provide recharge. This well is permitted up to about 2 million gallons per day of surface water recharge. And there is some retreatment ahead of it, also for disinfection purposes. All right, and then a little further south, we have the Donna Bay Restoration Program, which quite a few are probably familiar with this one as well. But I thought it was important to note that they also utilize wetlands for pre-treatment prior to sending this water to a recharge well. So here we have man-made Cowpen Slough Canal that was bringing too much excess surface water to Donna Bay. And as you all are aware, the timing and the type of water and the quantity of water really impacts our estuary. So this reroutes the excess surface water through a created storm water storage facility, and then some wetlands, and then finally to another storm storage facility where we're currently working on the design of a recharge well. And so this reduces about 75,000 to 150,000 pounds of total nitrogen per year. We're offsetting groundwater use with any saltwater intrusion. There's potential to apply for water supply credits, and because of just the many benefits, you get to see a lot of benefit sources typically for these types of projects. All right, so now kind of taking a look at surface water augmentation. And I'm sure we hear a lot about wetlands that are drying out and hydrologically altered wetlands due to some of the man-made activities. And in this case, we're looking at natural wetlands and restoring hydro periods and hydro patterns. So as I mentioned before, the Wetlands Application Rule, Chapter 62.611, provides a mechanism for wastewater reclamation facilities to apply their treated wastewater effluent or reclaimed water to natural wetlands that have shown historic alteration, hydrologic alteration, and meet certain criteria. The Boot Wetlands up in Polk County is one of the oldest systems that's been online since about 1984. It's a 115-acre cypress gum wetland that receives advanced secondary effluent and has a permanent capacity of about 0.6 million gallons per day. And it's been monitored since the 90s, and it's been kind of the data-driven proof that we haven't really seen any degradation of the wetland, really only enhancement and hydrologic lift to their hydro periods. In addition, sorry about the figure there, not sure what happened, but there is some reduction in total nitrogen, pretty significant, and then as well as a slight reduction in total phosphorus through this natural system. And here, way up north near Jacksonville, we have Blacksburg Swamp. It's also been operating for a few decades now. It's about 230 acres in size and is permitted up to 6 million gallons per day. One neat feature with this project is that it is protective of the downstream TMDL at St. Johns River, providing a lot of nutrient reduction. And yeah, as I mentioned, these systems are permitted under the wetlands application rule. All right, so we talked about restoring natural wetland hydro periods. So what about beneficial environmental flows, and what about our water supplies? So this concept is kind of usually looking at a surface flow wetland and taking that water and either sending it to maybe a water supply or a nearby river or waterway that might have an MFL, and using that wetland to improve the water quality and also augment these water supplies. Right up the road, we have the city of Arcadia intensified treatment marsh for nitrogen removal. And what's really cool about this project, there's many points, I guess, to make, but the city of Arcadia was facing a consent order for ammonia going into a tributary to the Peace River. And they were upgrading their plant. They knew they needed to make some upgrades, but obviously it takes a while for design and construction. So this served as a great interim solution for them, where we could reduce the ammonia to their permit limits. That graph to the left kind of shows their typical surface water discharge. And then the red is the permit limit and the green is the modeled wetland outflow. And what we did here is if with our modeling, you know, when we went to try to meet those ammonia limits, we discovered it would be about 80 acres to treat this water to the permit limits. However, by intensifying the system and introducing oxygen, pure oxygen to it, we were able to shrink the size of the footprint to 7 acres. And that's the area they had right over near one of their groundwater storage tanks, reclaimed storage tanks. And so we were able to convert a couple of their reuse ponds into constructed wetlands. It's currently under construction right now. My colleague Abby over here is helping to oversee it. But it just tells a great story of how these marshes can even be improved upon or intensified to meet the water quality criteria that we need to meet, even in limited space. And another kind of important thing to note here is that, you know, as I said, it's going to help them meet their consent order while they're building their plant. But they can even still use this system once their plant comes online. They won't need, obviously, that ammonia reduction. The plant will provide it, so they can just stop injecting pure oxygen and use the system as a passive marsh to further polish the water quality before it goes to the tributary to the Peace River. And so we projected about 14 tons of total nitrogen per year can be reduced and removed from the Peace River through this project. And finally, this one's an example out of the state just to kind of spark ideas of how these wetlands can be used even for surface water supplies. So Clayton County Utilities in Georgia, they had some land application systems where they were applying reclaimed water and decided in the 90s to actually convert these to treatment wetlands and to allow the outfall from these treatment wetlands to go into actually their drinking water reservoirs. And this has really helped them in times of drought. They were able to have their water reserves remain at like 77% capacity, even during their worst drought record. And then another interesting feature is because eventually this water ends up as a drinking water source, they were looking at a lot of micropollutants, contaminants of concern, pharmaceuticals and that sort of thing, and saw high rates of reduction for many of these organic compounds. And what's interesting with wetlands is that the retention time is usually on the order of days versus like a wastewater plant that's on the order of hours. So sometimes these compounds just need more time to degrade and rapid decay rate. But also the many removal mechanisms that I kind of shared with you earlier, some organic compounds are better degraded with UV degradation, some by microbial, some absorption. So it kind of can really target all these different compounds that we have now in our waterways due to all of them. All right, and then as Christina kind of mentioned before, there's just so many benefits to these systems, even besides the water quality and water supply. They just provide great recreational opportunities. And I've just seen some cities and counties just really run with it. And the Cal Wetland Park has a fox squirrel that is a Murphy, that's their mascot, and they've even produced videos on it. They have an Instagram page, a Facebook page. Many of these parks do. The Audubon Society loves them. Many of them are on the Great Florida Birding and Wildlife Trail. And it's something that the community can get excited about, can learn about their water resources. Many of these have educational displays, boardwalks, the like, and just the habitat creation that they create. They're also, many of them are, birding hotspots, as I mentioned, and then they're also adaptive to society's latest needs. So the City of Arcade is kind of an example of pairing, maybe traditional water treatment or wastewater treatment infrastructure with a wetland to kind of get the benefits you need, but maybe not paying the full cost of what it would take to do it conventionally. And now we're looking at pilot studies where we're studying whether wetlands can help with PFAS removal or helping to capture some of that. And then finally, could wetlands be used to help with AI data center discharge and cooling the water? We've done several of these systems out west to help cool the water for the cold water stream. So it'd be interesting to see, can that be applied here in Florida? Maybe the summer it's a little hot, but still it's cooler than the temperature of the discharge of those centers. So just things to think about of how these systems could be applied. And so, yeah, today I just hope I kind of could just share with you the different ways other cities, counties, utilities have applied these systems and just how they really are a link to the One Water approach and really unite the community with their surrounding nature and environment. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Great presentation. You had some great examples of specific projects. A lot of us, and you didn't even once mention TMDL or BMAP, but that's a lot of what we use to treatment wetlands stores to comply with our TMDLs and creating filter marshes. So it's another benefit putting these in place. But I got a specific question about, I'm interested in groundwater recharge wetlands. I guess it really depends on how livable your soils are. Myers, the county area, it's pretty marginal. Our groundwater levels are so close to the ground surface. But when you're building these, as the plants decay and all that in the system, do they start creating kind of like an impermeable layer that kind of prevents percolation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we've actually kind of looked into that and studied that over the years. And we kind of have this saying that wetlands that don't perk still perk half an inch a day. So we still see some leakage. It doesn't end up confining the bottom of the wetland. So really it's just looking at like, do you see it surface somewhere else? Like for the city of Arcadia, I know that they were concerned about the water surface. They had to line that system. But no, that's a great question. And that's why, you could pair it with a recharge well to get to the areas that you do want to recharge. So
pre-treated to that, to like a rapid infiltration base or something like that.
Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily have to if you could have a rapid infiltration basin, if that was working correctly, and you can infiltrate, you could just do it through the wetland. Unless you have very high rates of infiltration where you're not gonna be able to keep your wetland wet. So that's usually up in North Florida where we see that, where we're like, yeah, you probably need a rib because infiltration rates are so high, but you could pre-treat it with a wetland because the ribs aren't providing any water quality benefit. Yeah.
Quick question, just, I guess, since you've got the expert in the room here, so, just to understand a little bit more about the Arcadia project. What is the specific mechanisms at play here that's reducing the ammonia? Is it, so you mentioned the oxygenation basin, so is the idea that you're just accelerating digestion to get the ammonia out, or what's going on there between the deep and the shallow and then the like, how is that all?
Sure. Yeah. So I almost feel like I should just turn it over to Abby. She knows so much about it, but is one MGD system, the pure, basically in wetlands, they're limited by not enough oxygen. Like they could nitrify more, so convert that ammonia to nitrate if they just had more oxygen. So we're just providing the microbes that do that conversion, the supply they need to really be able to keep up with it. And Abby, feel free to add on to that. If I missed anything.
Supercharging.
Okay.
So we're promoting more, it's all the same microbiology that we do at the wastewater facility, and you're just kind of supercharging it and promoting growth by delivering that pure oxygen
Okay,
stream, because otherwise you're limited by atmospheric transfer.
right,
Water surface.
right.
It has a It has a 99%
Yeah, the other,
efficiency, right?
the other note is that this phone technology that we use has a 99% transfer efficiency for pure oxygen to the water. So we're actually dissolving up to like 120 milligrams per liter of dissolved oxygen. So it's a lot more cost effective than trying to like do aeration in a wetland, because you're only having the 2 feet of water for oxygen transfer. But delivering that pure oxygen and dissolving it instead of just bubbling it increases that concentration and send that supersaturated water throughout the wetland. So it's maximizing contact time with all those biofilms that are supercharging.
So do you find that there's any concern about, so does that also help then continue? So like our end game with this, with nitrogen is just getting it to nitrogen gas and getting it out, right? So you're doing the oxygenation that's taking care of ammonia. Does that also help with nitrate conversion as well, so that you're basically going through the whole cycle? Are y'all having to look at other means to deal with that aspect of it, like the carbon side of it, to try to kickstart that? Or
Yeah, what's interesting, oh yeah, go ahead. I'll let you go.
That's actually a really interesting question. So we're looking into that in more detail now. So the first one of these super oxygenated wetlands that was done was in Bay City, Michigan. And they actually found higher denitrification rates in that super oxygenated wetland than they do in process systems. And we think it might be linked to that carbon availability, because the oxygen is breaking down and making more carbon from the plants available for denitrification. But that's continuously being studied. So it may, we've seen at least that we get similar denitrification rates. So you get that nitrification and denitrification. So you get to nitrogen gas, or anything you convert to nitrate also gets converted to nitrogen gas. But we may even see further denitrification beyond just your ammonia input. We're still
okay, so
looking into it and studying it.
Okay, because there's, I mean, you know, as a water manager down here, nitrogen is the big bugbear, and the 3 tracks that I keep getting hammered on to address this is either A, hyperoxygenation, just for part of that nitrogen cycle process. B, the use of essentially so carbon-based infiltration, like wood chips in an anaerobic environment, like your Nitrex technology or whatever that's been going on or has been around forever. And then also, you know, nature-based plant uptake type solutions that, you know, Southport is exploring over BOMA, right, to see how to make that more efficient. Outside of a more direct approach, like what you guys are doing at the rest of the alum, yeah, the alum treatments, right? To just pull the particulates out and just, you know, deal with nitrogen and water on that way. So what I'm trying to wrap my head around is, if my goal is to get rid of nitrogen outflow from my systems into the harbor and estuaries. Is the answer, I'm assuming, some combination of these? And if so, what's been looked at to kind of put it all together to see kind of how we can do a more comprehensive thing? So I'm curious about like this and what you're saying, if y'all are looking into something that's taking multiple studies, it'd be great to kind of learn more about that and see kind of practically what's working and what isn't.
Yeah.
So, okay.
It kind of just depends on the speciation of nitrogen in your influent stream and what your effluent water quality goals are. So we also have an ongoing pilot, this in industrial wastewater, but that is a really unique speciation. It's very high nitrate, but their outflow limits are total nitrogen load and ammonia concentration.
Mhm.
So we do the like anaerobic biochemical reactors before to get into TN load compliance by removing the nitrate, by converting it to nitrogen gas. And then follow it by like a super oxygenated marsh to get into ammonia concentration compliance, and then whatever you convert to ammonia to nitrate also gets removed in that marsh.
Okay.
So again, you can kind of mix and match these and create in the same way that you do in a wastewater facility, kind of create anoxic, anaerobic, aerobic systems. You can kind of pair and stimulate the right type of wetland to accomplish what you're trying to do, depending on the type of the form of nitrogen and what your end goal is.
The end goal is all of it, but.
Yeah.
I was just like, the nitrification, the denitrification is happening in the wetlands, so you're targeting kind of all the forms, and the ultimate goal is to get it to nitrogen gas.
Well, but I think it's needing some help though, because that's one of the things that we find with this, if you just do a wetland and you run water through the wetland, that you can wind up having them be net exporters of nitrogen, depending on how productive the systems are, plant-wise and whatnot, because. And so that's because that's one of the things that we notice with our treatment wetlands or stormwater wetlands is that our exiting total nitrogen levels were actually higher, and most of it's in organic fraction.
Sure, yeah,
But-
you're talking about stormwater.
Right. But, you know, it's, there's more total nitrogen coming out than what's coming in. And so, you know, that's why
Yeah.
I think people are looking at things like, what you guys are doing to try to kickstart that organic breakdown.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think some of it too is looking at the design of it and the hydraulics, and there can be short circuiting, like we saw a system in North Carolina that was exporting it, but you know, it'd been operating for 30, 40 years, so you've had that organic accumulation, it needed to be maintained, like these systems still have some maintenance. But then one of them was short circuited, so it wasn't receiving the full treatment because it's about the surface area and the contact. So yeah, there's kind of multiple ways to look at it, and yeah, it'd be interesting, yeah, to kind of learn about your system or whatever that's exporting the nitrogen, but.
So I know we're diverging the tack conversation.
I have a question. Yeah.
Have you, given all of the storms and the increase in the rate of storms that we've seen over the past 10 or so years, have y'all looked into any of these project sites that have maybe responded better to whether it's storm damage or it kind of compensated for any, you know, runoff or stormwater flow following a hurricane?
I don't think we haven't studied that ourselves, but that would be interesting to look into. I know that we take, you know, storms into consideration. We do design and we create freeboard, and we know that wetlands, one of the things is they're flexible. In the summer, they're used natural wetlands. Always have had hurricanes come in and flood them and have water levels higher for a little bit. And they're resilient to those higher water levels. So we usually take that into consideration in our design and designing our embankments, just ensuring we can capture high storm events as well. And then if you're a utility and you know it's coming, and you know, okay, I'm going to draw down my wetland a little bit, try to be able to stack up. So I guess from a storm perspective, that's what we've seen. I haven't seen any storm impact really impact our wetlands negatively so far. That's about.
And I, you know, understanding that the natural right is the top tier, I guess if it was just, you know, if you had your pick and you didn't have a natural wetland to restore to get that maximum benefit or resiliency against storm, if there was one that you feel was like the next best in line, whether it's the recharge system or.
I guess it's just, I don't know if I could say like one is better than the other. It's more like, okay, what is the environment that you have? What is available to you? What is your goal? Are you next to a river that has a TMDL, or are you up in North Florida in the spring that has a TMDL? Let's get some recharge, or an MFL. So it's really kind of looking at the natural system nearby and what you need to improve. And then also what are the human needs there? It's kind of hard to choose between them all. And, I think the point is that there is a wetland application kind of no matter where you are, no matter what you're using. So I find that to be very interesting. And there's no silver bullet. There's other technologies too, but this is just one that's very interesting.
Your PFAS comment caught me, so it's very interesting, right? I know kind of waiting on the EPA to come out with surface water standards for PFAS, and that's all very concerning for utilities and where this is going. Conventional wisdom says the only way to get rid of PFAS is to burn it, right? To get it to a point where it's breaking apart. Are you guys employing any like innovative technology to try to eliminate it? How do you do that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we're just in the stages of studying it. We're doing a pilot study with JEA looking at ozone retreatment wetlands and conventional wetlands. And we're looking at surface flow mode and infiltration flow mode, because my hypothesis is that infiltration flow mode is going to have a better water quality because you almost have like this filter underneath the wetland. So we're just gathering PFAS data now. I can tell you we are seeing some transformations, but I think what we're seeing is mostly precursor transformation. So it can look bad when you initially look at it. But there's papers out there that have looked at, okay, maybe over time as the soils accrete and there's maybe some absorption, there could be possible degradation. There's a paper out there that says in iron-enriched environments, there's this microbe that can break the carbon fluoride bond. And these are strong claims. I don't know, we're investigating it, but we are thinking there's going to be need to be some sort of enhancement, like kind of for the case of Arcadia, we needed to do some enhancement. So our next year, we're in year 1 of the pilot. Year 2, we'll be looking at dosing it with this material called Fluorosorb. It's a modified bentonite clay. And so the idea is to dose the system with it, allow the wetland to almost be like this contactor, let it drop out into the soils, and then over time have soil accretion. Wetlands accrete soil about 1 centimeter per year, and see maybe long-term what could happen as the anaerobic conditions are more developed and it's getting buried. Like, is there degradation long-term? Now, we won't be able to find that out in a 2-year pilot study, but it sounds like the utility is going to want to keep it in operation. We could kind of see that effect. So there's potential. I'm not going to say that they can do it, but we're looking into that question, and we're seeing some interesting data right now. So,
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question. Thank you so much. That was very interesting.
Anyone online
Oh yeah, anybody online? Sorry.
who wants to say anything?
Okay.
one thing I forgot to note about the Arcadia system that was really cool for me and all the permitting we've done is that it's actually permitted as a wastewater unit process. So most of our systems are permitted under reuse. And that was kind of a neat feature to have kind of a wastewater treatment unit process permitted as a well. So that was kind of one fun fact about that.
Well, and I'll just add that we had EPA Region 4 leadership down here recently. We took them over to Arcadia and met with the city administrator, and she talked about this project and how excited and proud they were to be a part of this project. So it's wonderful that you're highlighting it. And
Yeah.
no, it's seeing members, plowing forward. I know they have had a lot with all the hurricanes and the damage and, but like really making lemonade out of lemons kind of thing with trying to upgrade infrastructure and look at new and innovative ways to do that. And we want to share that kind of information with all the other members and kind of exchange ideas of how we can keep progressing. And I know with the last thing I'd add is like, we're doing all this resiliency planning along with all of our member counties and cities. And it's definitely something that also in the context of implementing those adaptation plans and those upgrades to infrastructure that we've identified through that exercise, all these things could be employed. So it's just really kind of making sure that we keep that lens in, in the mix, and we're planning future projects to see where there's opportunities to employ these types of techniques.
It's an exciting time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.